All right, let's get going. It's 7 o'clock, and I want to thank everybody here for attending our second weekly Steamhouse Dialogues event, our second monthly Steamhouse Dialogues event. Excited to be here. My name is Razi, and the purpose and the objective of this event is to have an open dialogue in the city of Livermore about all things pertaining to the city of Livermore. And as you know, this is an election year, and lots happening in our city. So we're excited to be able to get people more involved and get people more aware of what's going on in the city. My name is Razi. My wife and I own Joya Yoga Studios and Steamhouse Dialogues. Want to be clear from the onset that we are a neutral party, that we wanted to be able to present this on neutral grounds. And we're excited to be able to host this with Mayor Woerner and everybody else that's involved in this. So welcome to the Eden Housing Debate. This is the second in a series of events that the Steamhouse will host to explore issues of events of interest in the Tri-Valley community. So you can follow the Joya Facebook page, or you can also follow the Steamhouse Facebook page to stay in the loop about all future events. Tonight's event will focus on the Eden Housing Development Plan for downtown Livermore. There are two competing approaches to this development, and one supported by the city of Livermore and another supported by a citizens group called Save Livermore Downtown, or SLD. Livermore Mayor's Bob Woerner is here and will present the city's position on at tonight's debate. SLD declined to participate in this debate. So as a proxy for SLD's direct participation, we've constructed the group's position on Eden Housing by reviewing the SLD documents on the website and other materials that we came across, and we'll present that position to Bob in a debate type format. And we've constructed SLD's position in a neutral, even-handed way, and to the best of our abilities. The Steamhouse takes no position on Eden Housing, nor does Joya Yoga, nor do we. And our only goal on this event is to inform the public, not to advocate for one side or the other. So time permitting, we'll be able to include a Q&A with Bob after the debate. Text your questions to, you'll be able to text your questions to us at 925-980-0205, the number that's on the screen, and I'll make sure I'm out of the way so everybody can see the number on the screen to text questions. And time permitting, we'll be able to take a few more questions from everybody else. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Mayor Woerner. Mayor Woerner, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Razi, and to you and the Steamhouse for hosting this event. I think it's really good to have the kind of dialogues that you're talking about. Before we begin, I'd like to point out that, yeah, I'm the mayor, but I'm going to be giving my personal opinions and beliefs about the topics we're discussing tonight. What I say should not be construed as anything other than that, and not the official stance of the city council or the city staff, but just what I believe. And to the extent possible, I'll try and give references for any specific facts I mention. I should probably also mention that I'm not running for re-election. You mentioned this was election season, but not for me. And because of some recent mobility issues I've got because of a pinched nerve. But I'm really doing this to contribute to the community dialogue that you're trying to get going. And I hope that the people listening find some useful food for thought. And if I may, before we get into the specifics of the housing, I'd like to show a couple of slides to give people listening in an overview of the downtown site and how we got to where we are today. I mean, as we look into it, I mean, I've learned some things that I didn't know, even though I've been here 46 years. So bear with me for a second while I try and share my screen. I'll go through that process.
We appreciate Mayor Woerner doing this. He's doing it from the comfort of his own home on his own personal time. So he's using his best technical savvy to be able to project the PowerPoints on so he can share with us. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Usually this gets handled for me. So let's see what is going on. I've got, let's see. And when I flip it over to the slideshow presentation, I'm going to lose a lot of my other screen. So we'll see what happens. But here's what I wanted to start with. Mark Roberts found this on the our history group site. There's a picture of downtown looking west from 1960. And what I wanted to show here is, here's First Street on the blue, and that was Highway 84. And we have two train tracks running through town. This was the Southern Pacific track. And you can see over here the train station. What was left when I got here in the 70s was just the last part of the building, but the main platform was gone. And then over on the right is the Western Pacific track, which is there today. And so the red line got moved. But what you can see, that what we're starting with here is a large swath of land in the heart of Livermore that was really just junkyards and whatever. So what we've got now, though, is today, here's a aerial view where the was able to get the drone to get a similar picture to the 1960s. Highway 84 is no longer on First Street. It's now out on Isabel. And I should mention that the move, or the thought of moving Highway 84, started in 1959, when the state identified the alternative site for relocating Highway 84. And it was in 74 that the train tracks were pulled up and the rail traffic was consolidated on the Western Pacific track. It was in 86 that the city adopted an urban design plan redevelopment strategy. And it wasn't until 2002 that the first parking garage was completed. 2004, we had the downtown specific plan and current revitalization strategy. There was 2005, 2007, where the Golden Triangle was built. The site over here on the other side of Livermore Avenue, the Lucky site, had been built by a developer, or been bought by a developer who went belly up. And the city then acquired the site because they'd given the developer a loan of affordable housing funds. So in 2009, that became a housing asset for the housing authority, or the housing for housing. So this whole area was then purchased at that point. Then the Great Recession hit 2008-9, and then it wasn't until 2009 that at that point, that's when we got the site. And then it was 2015 to 18 that we went through the community outreach, developed the plans. And since 18, in 19, we've been implementing various pieces. Now, the other thing that I want to go this way is, here's an aerial shot of the specific site we're talking about. And the red dashed line is where the railroad tracks used to go. And I know if Alan Burnham's on the line, he'll tell me that's not exactly where they are, but it's close enough for this discussion. This is the housing site, and you can see where the train depot was. And the other thing I want to mention is that there's the former dry cleaners was here, and that gas station. Now, the gas station leaked, caused a plume that they had to deal with for the Legacy Partners site. We're now having to deal with the plume from the dry cleaners and the heavy metals left over from the rail yard traffic and everything else. But at the beginning of this year, the Water Quality Board ruled that they're happy with our cleanup plans. There's nothing much to see here out of the ordinary. And we're just about to finalize the last details of the actual cleanup. So there's no consequence for any contamination. So I'll just close with this slide. It shows what's going on. Now, this is the proposed footprint approximately for the Eden housing, with the Veterans Park in between. We've got a couple of pictures there. But what I've also wanted to show is we have made a lot of progress since 19 on things. We've got the I Street Garage. We've got now the hotel, finally, with the 4 stories going again. It's on track. We just completed Livermore Plaza. This fall, we'll start the L Street Garage. And Legacy Partners is, that's not part of the downtown council directed development, but it's on track now to be done in the first part of next year. So I'll stop sharing at this point, and we'll go back to the normal, to the regular thing. If I can get out of the, now I have to get out of this thing here.
I think we got you out of there. You're good.
Well, I got to shut it down, so I'm not looking at it anymore.
Okay, so before getting into the debate topics, let's set the stage by describing at a very high level the housing development that the city plans to build and the alternative vision for the development advocated by SLD, by the local citizens group. So the city of Livermore has reached an agreement with Eden Housing. It's a workforce housing developer based in Hayward to build a 130 unit workforce housing development on the southeast corner of Railroad Avenue and L Street. So then the L Street intersection. So the development would include 2 4-story buildings, parking for residents underground, and a nearby parking garage, and a public park with a playground. A group called Save Livermore Downtown, or SLD for short, wants to relocate the housing development to the northeast corner of L Street and Railroad Avenue and create a park on the site where the city plans to build. SLD wants to expand the number of units from 130 to 230, spread across a 3- and 4-story building, and build a 5-level robotically operated parking garage. Bob, any comments on that?
I think what you just said is a reasonable description of the main physical elements of what is being discussed. However, there's really much more to consider when thinking about the relative feasibility of the visions. I'll start with a couple of high-level comments, and I expect we'll get more into the details as we go along. Now, with respect to the approved city plan, as I mentioned earlier, housing has long been planned and approved for the downtown Catalyst site. The approved Eden development plan has passed through multiple reviews at the city, county, state, and federal levels, shown it can get full funding and is essentially shovel ready. And given all the contractual obligations that have been built up over the years, changing course now will entail complex, expensive, and costly legal battles, as the city is not likely to win even if it tried. And furthermore, we've had multiple council elections in which the candidates who have supported the housing element on the Catalyst site have consistently won by large margins, as well as a recent referendum, Measure P, on the downtown plan, which won by 2-1. With respect to what SLD is advocating, frankly, there's actually not much more content than a drawing with an incomplete set of some high-level design parameters that are insufficient to properly assess feasibility. There's no affordable housing partner identified. There's no way to assess whether the project would qualify for the necessary tax-advantaged financing. There's no clear path through the legal hurdles already in place because of the existing obligations. And on top of that, those formal legal hurdles, the SLD wants to forcibly take the land from the current owners of the properties north of Railroad. For example, for the nonprofits and the thrift shop just south of it, and the parking lot critical for the hotel. The eminent domain process required, because these properties are not for sale, it's going to add further expensive and lengthy legal battles. The expenses to relocate the displaced owners to comparable locations, which is frankly not always easy, will also have to be paid. The bottom line is that what they are advocating will cost a lot of city funds, take a long time, with no guarantee of success given the possible counter lawsuits by the housing advocates. And finally, I'd like to point out that there's real danger for our community and what SLD is doing by delaying this very complex at twice the density with no parking. The most onerous provisions applicable for this site near our transit center allow building heights up to 3 stories more than local zoning permits, very high number of units per acre, and prohibit local jurisdictions from requiring any parking. And there are other density bonus provisions as well in that state law that allow developers to require that other zoning restrictions that we might have at the city level be waived. And to confirm what I just said, just look around at some of the recent battles now in Pleasanton and Dublin and throughout the state.
So I think what the SLD lawsuit entails, and this is not my position, so I'm paraphrasing SLD's lawsuit, SLD's points of views from the best that we can ascertain from their website and online materials as well. So before we get into more debating on the different project details, let's talk a little bit more about, look at the legal controversy surrounding downtown building, right? Downtown housing. So after the city council approved the Eden Housing Project in May of 2021, SLD filed a lawsuit asserting that the development plans were inconsistent with Livermore's downtown plan, and they should have never been approved. The lawsuit also alleged that the city needed to do further environmental analysis regarding the contamination on the site. And then Alameda County Court Judge Frank Roach also ruled against SLD in February, calling the lawsuit almost utterly without merit. So, but SLD appealed the decision to a state court and the case is pending. So SLD cited the following in defending the appeal. According to research, and I quote unquote, according to research cited in recent news article, 35% of Judge Roach's decisions have been fully reversed on appeal, and 44% have been reversed in full or reversed in part. So we believe that this is another instance where a decision should be reversed. So Bob, what's your response here? Is the Eden Housing Project really inconsistent with the downtown plan? And should residents be concerned about the environmental impact? And was the judge wrong when he ruled against SLD? What are your thoughts?
Oh, a couple of things. And notice that in filing their appeal, they mentioned no legal facts or anything. They just are hoping for the best, and their odds that they quoted are even against them. Yeah. But with the actual content of the lawsuit, the claims in both aspects are quite weak, as noted by the judge. Their challenges to the design approval are actually not much more than mere quibbles about some design aspects, like perceived aspect ratios on some windows. And furthermore, it's my understanding that even in substantive planning approval disputes, courts have typically ruled in favor of cities about whether they properly interpreted their own rules. They don't try and second guess. As to the environmental part of the suit, I should mention I listened to the court hearing. I counted, I think, 8 times when the judge asked SLD's attorney to explain what environmental change has occurred since the original EIR in 2009 was approved that would justify their challenge. None was ever given after 8 attempts for the judge to ask him. And I believe that's why the judge said their case was almost utterly without merit. My only disagreement with the judge is I don't think he needed to use the word almost. As to the likelihood of the judge being overturned by the appellate court, I believe the odds are very low. Again, their arguments are weak. The appellate court has already found that SLD may have filed the suit for purposes of delay and forced the SLD principals to post a $500,000 bond for damages. And even, as I mentioned earlier, even the odds quoted by SLD of that particular judge being overruled are not in their favor. And I just mentioned that what SLD is doing is not only dangerous with respect to what state housing laws could force on our community, they're clearly wasting a lot of time and money and needlessly causing divisiveness within our community. And most importantly, they're keeping worthy people from desperately needed homes.
So let's talk a little bit about the referendum. So on May 27th, I think it's May 27th, 2022, a local attorney initiated a referendum process on behalf of SLD supporter Richard Ryan, and signature gathering is currently underway. So according to Richard Ryan, and I apologize if I'm saying the name wrong, last name wrong, but instead of listening to the majority of, this is quote unquote from him, instead of listening to the majority of its constituents who favor a different location for the Eden Housing Project, the council has approved an extensive revision to the agreement that will allow the city to transfer the property at Railroad Avenue and L Street, Eden Housing, by this September. So the city is allowing Eden to acquire the land before Eden has secured financing. And before the lawsuit of challenging last year's city approvals for the project has been concluded. So the action is an obvious tactic to prevent the new council from making any change to its unpopular plan. So Bob, we'll get into some of the specifics of this petition in a few minutes, namely the new council part about the unpopular plan. That's very interesting, but we'll get into some of the specifics of the petition in a few minutes, but what's your general response to this referendum?
Well, the purpose of our recent resolution was to keep the project on track after all the delays due to the Eden Housing not being able to accept the funding because of the pending lawsuit. What you see in all the actions against the plans for downtown fundamentally have been targeted about preventing financing from being put into a project. And Eden had to return 68 million of tax advantage credits to the state because of the pending lawsuit. And right now, we're also at risk that the 14.4 million A1 funding from the county might have to be given up. So by passing the resolution that we just did, we keep things moving along. Now, I'll just say, the key policy decision about whether to sell the Eden Housing was done a long time ago. And all we're into is implementing, and I'll say a little bit more about that. The petition that's circulating is an attempt to set aside the city council's recent resolution, approving our amended agreement to sell housing, the asset to Eden for the affordable housing. And it's really designed to further delay the project. And this is a little bit complicated, but it's extremely important in this instance, so bear with me for a second. Only legislative acts, not administrative acts, are subject to referendum. And this is very important distinction for this. The city attorney is currently evaluating the city council's resolution to determine whether it contains a legislative act. But in advance of that, I'm going to give you my opinion. I don't believe there are any legislative acts in the recent resolution. Since the city council approved the use of the property for housing years ago and approved a specific plan to use the property for the Eden Housing project in 2018. Now, the first partial summary they are circulating with their petition state that the council's recent resolution implements prior legislative acts. Now, the current referendum attempt is quite unlike the prior two referendums and one initiative against the hotel, which did contain properly contested and specific legislative issues. And we dealt with them accordingly. For the current referendum, no specific legislative acts have been shown to exist in the council's recent resolution by anyone. Therefore, given the lack of any evidence to the contrary having been presented to date, I believe approval of the amended agreement is entirely an administrative act that implements the city council's prior plans and is not eligible to be processed as a referendum. Now, I'll just point out, this is my 11th year on the council after having also served on the Planning Commission. And I've carefully studied the difference between legislative and administrative acts. And these are things that the normal person doesn't have to deal with, but that's what everything is hinging on. So I believe SLD is trying to use illegitimate means to disenfranchise the voters who voted the current city council in office, who explicitly campaigned on getting the downtown plan completed expeditiously. I think this is just one more egregious example of their attempt to waste time and money at the community's expense. As I kind of mentioned, we're now in uncharted territory for Livermore, and I'm actually very interested to see how this all plays out over the next few months. I'm not sure what the implications are of rescinding supposed legislative acts in a resolution without first proving they exist. And at this point, I got to admit, I don't know what evidence might be put before us and what decisions, if any, I might be asked to make based on the evidence and the applicable rules?
You know, that's very interesting, but let's talk about the allegations that the city refuses to talk about the alternatives. So there's been a lot of that circulating around in our community where everybody's talking about the city doesn't want to consider the other options that are available. So opponents of the city's plan often complain that city council refuses to consider alternatives to their Eden housing plan. As an example, the East Bay Times printed the following letter to the Livermore resident Linda Milanese, submitted in response to an article published by the East Bay Times that had been critical of SLD. So this article about the proposed Eden housing project lacks balance. So what's missing? So an explanation of why SLD feels compelled to fight to preserve some of the open space in the center of the town. And these are SLD's position. And then nowhere in the article does it state the side of SLD's side. And then instead, the article extensively quotes council members who demonize SLD members, calling them undemocratic, racist, and classist because they disagree with city council that refuses to consider the alternatives. So the council accuses SLD of being opposed to affordable housing when in fact SLD proposes a plan that would create more affordable housing without destroying downtown. So I think a city council that berates and maligns citizens and public and bypasses their input while handing over low interest loans to developers is the one to be called undemocratic. So Bob, is it true that the city council refuses to consider alternatives to its Eden housing plan?
Well, let me just say, when the statement or quote that you just gave, there's a lot to unpack there. But let's focus on the one piece, as you said, about whether we're looking at alternatives. I'd like to reiterate that I do not believe they've actually presented anything that can be properly evaluated that covers all the financial, legal, as well as planning requirements, as I said would be necessary to be addressed 2 years ago. Second, I did offer to explore a possible compromise, only to have my offer rejected. I suggested the possibility of leaving the north building on the site, and I'll just give you some background as to why that might have been possible. The 79 units in the Eden plan that is close to the 84 that's legally minimum that's legally required by all our contracts where we bought this site in the first place. The county A1 funding of 14.4 million is tied to that building as phase one of the project and might not be jeopardized if we put the south building somewhere else. The north building has a smaller footprint than the hotel complex that Joan proposed in the same location on that part of the housing site. And the smaller south building might fit someplace on the other side of Railroad if we could find a willing seller. But it sounded plausible to me, and I was willing to explore it as a council member just to see if there was anything there. But my offer was summarily rejected by Joan Sepla, and any consideration of such a compromise. And she communicated to me at the time that she wanted all of the housing site at that time for her purposes, and that she'd changed her mind about having put a building on there at all.
Let's address the residency criteria. So, and what, as far as the units are concerned. So the residency criteria from the SLD side, this is the City of Livermore's plan, so we can compare both plans. City of Livermore's plan, to my better understanding, to the best of my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is to qualify to live in the Eden housing development. Residents must also earn between 20% and 60% of Alameda County's area median income, or AMI. So, for example, a family of 4 that earns between $27,400 and $82,200. The income limits and rents adjust for family size. So local healthcare workers, public safety personnel, school staff, hospitality employees, and employees of the downtown small businesses and restaurants would receive priority, right? So that's the City of Livermore's plan. So to the best of my understanding. So the SLD's plan is 45 of the 230 units would be designated for Livermore Public Schools. There's public school teachers and staff who earn below 110% of the AMI. 185 of the units would be allocated to residents earning below 60% of AMI. So SLD's position, and they allege that under the city's plan, the promised housing for teachers, firefighters, and police has disappeared. So with that in mind, Bob, so is it true that the city reneged on a promise to provide housing for teachers, for firefighters, and for police? And a key difference between the city and SLD is that SLD would add 45 units for teachers. So SLD's position is they have more units. SLD would fund the purchase of the land needed for the housing with proceeds from the state of a surplus Livermore Valley School District building. So what would be your response to that?
Well, I think I don't agree that we've reneged. And if I may, I'd share my screen again. Because what I want to put up there is the eligibility chart. Let's see if I can make this happen. Let's see. Got to get to where it can do it. So just take a look. So this is according to the AMI and who can live there. Now I also point out we have the ability with this project to target certain occupations. The state, with points in the system for who gets to live there, and that the state funding sets the AMIs of that 20 to 60%. Because if you want to get the affordable housing, tax advantage financing, you have to be in that range. If you go beyond that, you're basically losing points on the rating system. And it was pointed out to me, if you lose any points, you've lost, because you have to set your project for maximum points. And the point system and what's emphasized, changes from year to year. But with that background, just look at this chart. And it's a little bit complicated, but bear with me for a second. Across the top is the unit size, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3 bedroom. Just below that are the household size and the maximum qualifying income. So you see a person of 1, 54,800, 1 bedroom, 2, 62,640. That's how you read this chart. The check marks or the X's indicate whether a particular worker could qualify for that unit. And what we've got over there on the rows are who from the police department, who from the school district, who from the healthcare and downtown workers could qualify. And what you'll see just by the presence of all those green check marks, that indeed we are providing the essential workers the housing. Now, there are some places that, there are X's can't qualify, and you do see in the police department that a longtime police officer is not going to qualify because they are paid well in this town, and that but a police cadet would, and that can help us recruit. And the other thing to keep in mind, that if you want your essential safety worker departments to function, you need not only the frontline workers that are pounding the pavement and helping put out the fires, but you need the support personnel. They're just as essential to the total functioning of the department. And I will also point out that look at all the starting teacher qualifies for a lot of units at different family sizes. And you see that the child welfare aide, the library media specialist. So there are those people that do qualify. So how you want to characterize this chart, I mean, I'm not going to get into it. This is what is. So I'll leave it at that. now I'll try and end my slideshow and go back to an unshared screen here. So that's that. Let me now rearrange stuff. So and as I said, the AMI range has been shifted over time because of the being able to qualify for the financing. So if we're not in the 20 to 60% range, not going to happen. Now, here's another point I'll make is with respect to SLD's claim about how they could add specific housing for teachers at 110% AMI. I'll just mention, city staff is in frequent contact with school district officials. Although there may have been some casual conversation years ago about the school district perhaps partnering with Eden, it's my clear understanding that the school district is currently pursuing other options and has no interest in being part of the downtown affordable housing project. That means that there is essentially no difference in the residents' eligibility criteria if SLD was to have any hope of financing their vision. Thus, the SLD vision provides zero additional housing for teachers, nurses, first responders, or any other targeted demographic on in terms of an eligibility.
That's very interesting. I mean, let's delve into funding a little bit more. So SLD has accused the city of putting city funds at risk. So SLD supporter Jean King has stated that the city is taking a lot of financial risk here, quote unquote, from her. So the agreement is a horrible deal from the city, quote unquote. SLD also states that the land acquisition costs of its plan are reasonable, with a conservative estimate of about 9.3 million for acquisition plus 1.3 million for demo and business relocation. So according to SLD, its plan would have three funding sources: the city's low-income housing fund, number one; number two, the funds remaining in the housing successor fund; and then the sale of the surplus Livermore Valley School District building. So according to SLD, enlarging the number of units increases Eden's chances of securing additional grant funding. So is it true? Is it true that Eden Housing Project is putting the city's funds at risk? And what do you think of SLD's funding plan?
Well, the city isn't taking any untoward financial risk by making a fully secured loan. In fact, the loan agreement Eden will execute protects the city's interest in the unlikely event that Eden is not able to build the affordable housing. The city gets the land back in the event of default or the cash value equivalent. There's no risk here. This is typical protection granted sellers in deals like this. So it's a false statement. I'll also mention that increasing the size of the project may actually decrease the funding opportunities. The projected total cost for the Eden project is currently about 124 million. The price of the land north of Railroad that they talked about in detail, all the funding, is really only a small portion of the total SLD project costs, which I estimate to be around 225 to 250 million. And I get that by extrapolating from Eden's cost at the smaller size. And so the city and county controlled funds are not that large, and state loans are typically capped to prevent too much going to any one project. So my background's in finance. I just got to tell you, the deal with Eden is typical and it's very safe. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more, having hashed through a little bit of the financing questions. Let's talk a little bit more about parking and traffic. So SLD has voiced many concerns about the impact of the city's plan on parking and traffic in the downtown area. So SLD has stated that the following. So number one, Eden Housing Plan provides only 132 parking spaces, 98 less than the 230 spaces needed to serve its residents. Number two,
This will cause residents and their guests to use nearby public parking, which will discourage those wanting to come to downtown businesses and the proposed cultural facilities. And then number three, the underground parking garage will have just a single exit and an entrance located on L Street where the city's 500 stall L Street garage is planned. More cars will come downtown looking for parking. And then what's not to like about a new age automated parking garage? So parking advantages claimed by SLD include the SLD plan includes a private above ground 450 stall robotic parking structure, leaving the city owned parking for the public. And according to SLD, the expenses of the building in the stall, the expense of building a stall in an underground garage as the city plans is approximately $54,000 versus $34,000 per stall in an above ground robotic parking structure, which SLD plans. So retrieval of a car in a robotic garage would average 3 minutes, far faster than the experience in a conventional garage. So our position, or I'm sorry, SLD's position is that our parking is it's a much better deal for the city. So is the Eden housing development going to create the traffic problems that SLD alleges? And does their vision alleviate these problems? What are your thoughts on that, Bob?
A few things. First, you mentioned the robotic parking, and it sounds sexy, but not so much. And if you say it takes 3 minutes to get a car out, that's per one robot. And if you've got 500 cars and you at 3 minutes per car, that's a long time to empty that garage. So you got to be careful here. And then these cost estimates, not so much. You know, they're just, I don't know where they're getting those. But I'll just also mention, contrary to SLD's website, the Eden plan has an exit entrance for each building, not just one for both on Veterans Way. There's one on Railroad for the North Building and one on Veterans Way for the South Building. And I'll just also mention the city is following through on its commitment to maintain adequate parking as we add new uses to the downtown. The new I Street garage has 280 spaces and is opening next week. And the first phase of the 475 space L Street garage is going to start construction this fall. As to the traffic impact of the individual project alternatives, I don't understand how having 450 cars across the street 100 feet away is okay, but having 130 cars is somehow not. I have confidence in our professional traffic engineering staff who've analyzed and signed off on the impacts of the Eden project in the context of the new garages, streets, and anticipated traffic patterns. Although robotic parking may be appropriate in some circumstances, I don't believe it's been shown to be practical with respect to large garages with high demands.
Robotic parking is sexy, that's for sure. So let's talk about it a little bit. So as we talked about the parking, let's talk a little bit about the canyon effect. So SLD states the following. So transferring housing to the north would stop the spread of a 4-story building in the heart of the city. So it would preserve the comfortable, open feeling and historic character of the downtown area. And then relocation of the block-long oversized buildings is the single most important community benefit. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, talking about historic character and such, first I'd like to point out that these people are part of the same group that advocated for BART to downtown and a 10-story, 2,000 regional theater with 426 units of housing on the site, as opposed to the 130 we're talking about. Furthermore, they previously advocated for not reducing the height limit in the downtown. It's like, you got that right. They argued against not reducing the height limit. I've got the official minutes of a February 13th, 2017 council meeting. I'm just going to quote from this. who spoke, Jeff Caskey, read a statement from Lee Yonker opposing the establishment of an interim height limit reduction for residential projects within the downtown specific plan area, and said there were many other options to consider. He said maybe the city could exercise this option on the growth site, but options should be left open on the 8-acre site. Richard Ryan, same person who's circulating this referendum now, spoke in opposition to establishing an interim height limit reduction for residential projects within the downtown specific area. Gene King spoke in opposition to establishing an interim height limit reduction for residential projects within the downtown specific plan area. So she questioned how the limit would be applied to mixed use projects. Bill Dunlop spoke in opposition to establishing an interim height limit reduction for residential projects. So they came out in force in 2017 when I proposed lowering the height limit to not let that happen. So the other thing is their current claim that 4-story buildings a few hundred feet north of the preferred location, that's just disingenuous. And we have 3- and 4-story buildings within that general area now. And so it's already part of our downtown feel, and moving it across the street, it's not going to change it. And as to our historic character, the community had to fight this group to save Blacksmith Square, which they wanted to bulldoze for their hotel. And I'll just mention again, let's not forget that under state housing laws, SLD is risking a 6- to 7-story housing complex with no parking requirements as they try to further delay the project with their rhetoric and frivolous lawsuits and referendums.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there for sure. Let's talk about the community survey and what the community wants. So, according to SLD, a respected survey shows that Livermore residents oppose the current Eden plan for downtown by a 4-to-1 margin. So 4-to-1 margin, Livermore residents oppose this, according to the latest survey that SLD issued. So wanted to give you a chance to comment on that.
Well, first thing, that survey they're referring to is a push poll generated by them. And but let's look at the facts that are really before us. We know that our Livermore voters voted overwhelmingly for yes on Measure P to affirm the building hotel next to the Bankhead, for building the hotel there, where it had been planned since 2004. And for the current and recent past council members who support the approved downtown plans, overwhelmingly voted for that. All the recent public comment and council meetings has been 2-to-1 in favor of what the council is approving. And the also mentioned that the city did a recent survey to assess the community appetite for a sales tax increase to support infrastructure improvements. And that indicated a majority of residents felt the city was going in the right direction. So I don't see, I don't see any evidence for this supposed 4-to-1 margin that they're always touting.
Wow, wow. Well, I wanted to thank you again for your time tonight, and I wanted to open the floor to questions. So I'm going to get out of the way here, and there's there's a phone number that you can text your questions to. It's 925-980-0205. We'll stay online with Mayor Bob Woerner, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to text them to Mayor Woerner, and we'll try to respond as quickly as we can. Once we receive the questions. Really wish that somebody from SLD would have been on with us, so that way you could have the same opportunity to ask them their point of views. We did the best that we can to compile the information that we have based on what we saw online and what we saw published within certain groups, and try to convey their point of views to the best of our ability. Steamhouse and Joya, we're neutral on this, so we're just trying to present a neutral ground for everybody to kind of open up and talk about. So wanted to open the floor up for questions, and then Mayor Woerner, if you had any further comments, please feel free to talk as we get the questions rolling in.
Oh, I'll just say thanks for the opportunity to speak about the Eden housing element of the council's approved plan, downtown plan, and Now, I hope the listeners found some value in the discussion. It's definitely, I think, something to think about carefully as you weigh the alternatives.
Hold tight as we receive questions. Okay, we've got no questions. Give it a few more minutes and we'll see what comes up. I'm definitely excited to keep the dialogue open about this. Any idea, so what are the next steps in the project, Mayor Woerner? I mean, where are we going? Should the Eden housing project finally take off? What are the timeframes for this? When can we expect ground to break and development to begin and the nice stuff, the good stuff?
Well, it really depends on getting the financing. As I mentioned, Eden had to turn back 68 million, and that's because of the pending lawsuit. Now, they lost it decisively in the first round. They've appealed, and I think that appeal might happen within a year. And there are efforts underway to get the appellate court process speeded up. They don't generally work that quickly, but there is an attempt. So within the next maybe 6 to 9 months, we'll get the appeal done. This referendum is out there. I don't know how long that's going to take to get resolved and where it goes. And so it's too early to say. In another month or two, you might know.
So sorry, go ahead, Mayor Woerner.
So I was just going to say, and then the tax advantage financing is only done on a couple of times per year, and then Eden has to get into that cycle. So if SLD would finally realize the writing's on the wall and just give it a rest, we could get going pretty quick. But that doesn't seem to be their MO.
Okay, so we've got a first set of questions rolling in. So the first question is, there are now multiple nonprofits on the so-called alternative site. Does SLD consider the impact of bulldozing them out of existence and the impact on the people they serve?
I have no idea.
I can't answer that on behalf of SLD, so I'll give you the floor.
Okay, well, what I was going to say is, that may be a rhetorical question, but the point is, even if you look at their drawing that they have, they've got a thrift shop on the first floor. But where is the thrift shop for the 2 years that it takes to do the project? Where'd it go? And if it went there, why would it come back? And the other thing is, if you actually see how a thrift shop operates, it needs a drop-off area. It needs a lot of land around it. It isn't just a little storefront somewhere. So I don't personally think that they're actually thinking about it very carefully.
We got another question that rolled in as well. So this is the question regarding the timeline. So is SLD, if SLD was successful, what kind of time frame are we looking at to get the housing built? Do we have to start from square one on the process? That is, if I understand the question correctly, if SDL was successful in their efforts. So if we start from scratch again, what happens?
Well, I don't think I'll be alive by the time that gets through.
Oh, but yeah, we got to get you to do some yoga, Mayor Woerner, so you hang around a little bit longer for us. That's an interesting question. I had a question, and I think it's this is one coming from me. I think a lot of our, as we get involved a little, as we get into the election cycle for this year and this is an election cycle, so we've got an election coming up in the city of Livermore. I think it's important for us to kind of keep these debates open and these topics open, so even the candidates that are running for office can voice their opinions. So I'd be curious to know, and if this is an open invite to any candidates that are on this call right now, or anybody that's running for office in this fall to come on and kind of share their points of views about what's going to happen with downtown. As I do think the future city council and the future mayor of Livermore, whomever that may be, will have a lot of influence on what's on what's going forwards. So hope to be able to invite more people on here. So, and I'll I've always found it very interesting that a lot of people never really kind of pay attention to down ballot races, and you got to start paying attention to down ballot races, as those really affect how we run our businesses and how we run our daily lives, as we're experiencing that right now. So David, I think David, who's also moderating our event, I'll give it another minute or two to see if we have any final questions, and then leave it to Mayor Woerner for final thoughts on this topic. Okay, so this was a question that we needed to re-ask. So my question is, this question was regarding to the timeline, and it's the same question. I think they're trying to say that that we wanted to rephrase the same question. So is SLD, if SLD was successful, what kind of time frame are we looking at? Are we looking at to get the housing built? Do we have to start from square one in the process? David, I think we already answered that question. If there's anything different about the question, let me know.
Let me just, I was a little bit flipped on the first one.
Sure.
Yeah, you pretty much would have to talk with square one, get back there.
Okay.
We've got to do the environmental for that, go through all of that. But before you even get there, you've got to resolve all kinds of lawsuits. So those are years in the making. And then you've got to then redesign everything. And just look where Eden is. They're shovel ready, and it's going to take a couple of years. So no, it's a good fraction of a decade or more if you went down that path. And I'll just wrap up by saying, you might have people out there, and you mentioned the election, people saying, yeah, I just want to give people a choice. This is a false choice. There's not really any reality to that alternative. And I've been in this business a while. What's going on, now I'll come back to my finance, it's about putting uncertainty into a project so that it can't get financing. That's what they did to the hotel. Finally, that got resolved, and now we're getting going, but now they're trying to do it to the housing. It's injecting uncertainty. And so what you'll see are all kinds of wild statements and misinformation. It's just to sow that uncertainty and confusion so that financing is not viable. And then furthermore, by putting these lawsuits in place, because of the way the state financing goes, that's for sure a way to delay a project.
Well, Mayor Woerner, thank you so much for your time today. And I want to leave it with this. If there are any candidates, we'd love to be able to share your points of views and about the project and how we can better downtown Livermore. We believe in an open discussion and open format discussion. Another open invite to any of our, to Save Livermore Downtown or Save Downtown Livermore group. If you guys are on, an open invite to you as well for you to come on and voice your opinions and share your thoughts on it, and a neutral ground where everybody can hear what we're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to accomplish as well. So Mayor Woerner, thank you so much for your time. Evan, I know I saw you raise your hand, and I can't, let me see if I can, yeah, I'll give you a chance to unmute right here. Let me see if I can unmute you really quick, and then we can close up. You have the mic, Evan. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I am running for city council, and so since you asked, I just wanted to chime in my 2 cents here. First of all, thank you, Mayor Woerner, for being here for this debate. Thank you, Razi, for running it. I don't really have much to add. I thought Mayor Woerner did a wonderful job of summarizing everything that's happening right now, but I do stand in support of the Eden project moving forward. I've been in this project for a long time, working with the city, working with Eden Housing, seeing it progress along the way. And this really is the best possible project we could have for this land. It is going to be amazing once it's built. I think people are going to really appreciate the open space provided. The people who live there are really going to be the ones who help vitalize our downtown, who help bring a lot of business downtown, as well as the kind of people who will be working downtown and really keeping our industry running. So I just wanted to say thank you for the debate. Thank you for letting me speak for a minute. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Evan. Look forward to hosting you maybe on one of these Team House Dialogue events soon. So we'll touch base soon with your campaign.
Definitely. Thank you.
All right, cheers. Mayor Woerner, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'll let you
Sure.
say the final goodbyes and we'll close shop.
Oh, well, just thanks again. And I take it as part of your offer here is to give us, we show up live with free coffee. Is that right?
Woo, you're gonna have to, you know,
Just the participants. I mean, not everybody in the audience.
come on in, but you have, Mayor Woerner, you have to remember I have a wife too that I report to as well. So
But you couldn't give it to us anyway. You know, you can't be bribing us. I was just kidding.
yes, sir. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. We'll try to host these events twice a month for the city of Livermore, and I look forward to connecting with everybody here again. Thank you guys so much, and this will conclude tonight's event. Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.